So, when I start, I would like to, this is the overview of the issues I would like to go through with you. First, some facts and figures on refugees in Germany very briefly, and well, you know, or many of you know, Germany has been a country of immigration for a very, very long time. One out of 5 people nowadays living in Germany have a migratory background. There's about 16.5 million people out of 82 million, so 21%. 30% of those aged 10 to 19 and even 35% under 10 years old have a migratory background. So the finding and the evidence will continue to rise. So you have classes in Germany, school classes, where you have got, depending on the city, where you've got a very high migratory background. The number of refugees skyrocketed, beginning maybe 2014, but especially until 2015, but has dropped since. In 2015, there was an arrival of around about 900,000 refugees to Germany. First, the estimations were higher, but they were reduced because there was so much informal migration going on between the European member states when the Schengen area was still open and border controls were totally down, so it wasn't easy to really calculate the figures. But as you may expect of Germany's try to reorganize this border control quite quickly. So in 2016, numbers dropped already to around 300,000 refugees coming to Germany, so from 900,000 to 300,000, 1/3, and in 2017, approximately 200,000 people coming to Germany. So, but altogether in 2016, there were around about 1.6 million refugees living in Germany, which is something for a country of 82 million. Just imagine California is about half the population of that. So main countries of origin of asylum seekers in 2016 were Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, Eritrea, Russian Federation, interesting, also in the top 10, Nigeria, Somalia. There have been declared even 5 countries with a high probability of refugees being allowed to stay, and these are Syria, Iraq, Iran, Eritrea and Somalia. They've got very high recognition rates of their asylum seekers of more than 80%. Some socio-demographic background of refugees: gender, 2/3 of all refugees are male, and concerning age, almost 75% of all refugees are below 30 years old. So very young population has come to Germany in a country that has got an aging population, many young people. 38% are aged between 18 and 29. So that makes what we think, of course, as the Ministry of Education and Research, that makes education one of the keys for successful and sustainable integration of refugees in Germany. And here's an interesting finding, I think. I will explain some. Let me first say some words about the source concerning empirical research work done in Germany on the social demographics of refugees. It's mainly done by 3 institutions, especially the real-time empirical work. First is the Research Center of the Federal Office for Migration and Refugees, and the BAMF, that's the famous, some people say notorious BAMF, which is responsible for organizing and conducting the asylum seeking process, but also for providing integration courses to refugees and other migrants, also regular migrants wanting to stay longer in Germany. The BAMF Research Center is also interviewing refugees on their socio-economic background, including education, and is publishing its SOCO analysis report from time to time. SOCO meaning social components such as gender, age, marital status, school attendance, as well as the last occupation. Participation concerning education and occupation is voluntary, so they don't have to answer the questions, and it's always self-reported, so no thorough investigation whether they say the truth or not. But response rates have, however, been very high. 80% of the refugees participating in the question concerning educational background. And BAMF research data says, although this constitutes voluntary information for which no proof is required, and school and occupational system in different countries of origins are difficult to compare with those in Germany, the social component data nevertheless provide an initial insight into the refugees' qualification structures. This is the first major source. Then there's the second. It's the Institute for Labor Market and Professions Research, IAB or IAB, which is part of the Federal Employment Agency for Labor, and therefore a major player in the integration into the labor market. And the third, and that has been, well, funded for more than 40 years, I think, by the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research. By the way, put it briefly, it's BMBF is the abbreviation in German, so I would like to use it just to save some time. And we've been funding the Socioeconomic Panel since around 40 years, the SOEP, S-O-E-P. And it's a long-term panel study on facts, living conditions and opinions of Germans. Some time ago, a specific sample on migrants living in Germany was drawn, and in 2016, and this is what I'm relating to now, a sample of 4,000 refugees was set up. The study has a very high reputation, the SERP study in Germany has a very high reputation concerning representativeness and quality in Germany. As far as I know, scientific use files are available for researchers from all over the world. Then there's a fourth source, which is not here included, but it's the microcensus of the German Statistical Office. They also provide figures on refugees. So now, final educational background of refugees. So what was interesting to see in this specific refugee sample of the Socioeconomic Panel together with IAB and BAMF is we have a certain polarization of educational backgrounds of refugees. On the one hand, we have 39%, I wonder if you can read it from the back seats, 39% that have got no school certificate when they arrived in Germany. On the other hand, we have got 35% who have got a high school certificate, meaning they've got a high education entrance certificate of the country of origin. This is the average above all countries of origins. If you look at figures from Syria, it will be here around 50%. And if you look at Iran, it will be around 75% of the adults. We're talking about adults only because most of them managed to finish their schools. Some more interesting figures, and by the way, if there are any questions, please ask. I mean, maybe we can save some time for the final discussion, but if there are just some clarifications in between, please feel free to ask. So over 1/3 have a higher education entrance qualification, and 18% of the adult refugees already had attended university studies in their country of origin, and 11% of adult refugees hold at least a first academic degree. By the way, the next update of the panel studies with result of the latest interviews included of the last wave, but also like they are continuously being asked and interviewed, and the next next result is to be expected by the end of this year. So, what was the response? At the top you can see the then Minister of Education and Research, Professor Johanna Wanka, who was our minister from 2012 to 18, sorry, 18, the spring, long new negotiations for the new government. She was in power by then, and of course the BMBF, we thought, okay, what can we do about it? So we've got this polarization. On the one hand, very many low educated, but also high educated. So there were actions taken in two different areas. First, initiatives to promote basic language and reading skills. But then also, and this is a special issue if you look back at the former, I didn't talk so much about the middle school. This is much higher in Germany because we have a long tradition of having vocational educational training, and a large part of the population don't go to university but do this vocational training and still get good jobs which are well paid and more better paid, because as an Asian society we're lacking labor force in that area. So this is the second one, the middle area, assessment of practical skills and access to vocational training in Germany. Very important step, not to be underestimated in Germany. And third, this is rather my part, which I'm going to talk about later, integration at higher education institutions. Plus, there were we are financing also regional coordinators of educational programs, because there's a certain, Germany is a federal country like the US, so we've got the federal level, the Länder level, so the federal states, and the local level. And sometimes there are competing programs and actors, and therefore it's interesting and maybe necessary to have this kind of coordinating house. And third, we are funding research project, because BMBF has always been funding research besides our NSF called the DFG. BMBF is also major funding of research, and we have funded a lot of we want to enhance knowledge on integration and migration, and this is why we're funding refugee research on migration and refugee, and which is interesting for researchers, for you that want to know more about German research on migration and refugees, is the so-called Forschungslandkarte, a refugee research map, which is, you can find the link here, and it provides you with, you can ask for keywords or disciplines or authors, institutions and so on. You'll have a good overview of what is happening in research in Germany. And here, in this area, of course, is also the funding of the socio-economic panel that led us to the findings that we had. Whoops. Yeah, so the BMBF, now let's go deeper into the higher education area. That was the BMBF Action Plan for High Integration of Refugee, which was published and issued by a press conference on 13th of October 2015 by our ministry. It's a 100 million euro program running until beginning of 2020. Three main areas: assessing the real competencies of the refugees, because of self-declaration may vary from really, and also recognition of their educational background in Germany. Second, now after knowing what they bring and what they need, we'll secondly find bridging courses for asylum seekers and accepted refugees, and put them both here because it's going to be interesting later. Asylum seekers and accepted refugees, and we've got this on-campus inclusion by those thousands of student volunteers that have been active in Germany since 2015, and this is really tremendous. I mean, like, our program, it wasn't like set up in the middle of nowhere by the German government, but there had been an interesting student initiative since 2014, Study Without Borders, online higher education for students in crisis situation, which later in 2015 became Chiron, open education, open higher education. Then we had early initiatives by some universities, like Bremen University, already at the beginning of 2015. We had all those voluntary students initiatives also since 2015, early 2015. And then the German Rectors Conference also launched a campaign, German Universities Open to the World Against Racism and Chauvinism, which was also issued in November, so just 2 days before our action plan was published. So there was something going on. This was interesting. This not only holds to higher education, but to various areas of life. Civil societies was just tremendous and particularly strong with many volunteers at universities assisting the new arrivals. Taking up this tremendous efforts seemed efficient and promising to us. So these are the three main areas, and those programs we decided should be rolled out by the German Academic Exchange Service. Talk to that later. Because this was the organization with which I was cooperating anyway, because I was working on international academic mobility, and this is one major organization. Further issues there, which is helpful for refugee integration. There are no, in Germany in general, there are no tuition fees. And this holds for both German students as other international students, unless you go to a private university, but they are not so there are not so many in Germany, so usually no tuition fees, and this is also something for the refugees. And this is a difference to ordinary or to other international students. Under certain conditions, refugees are eligible to German BAföG, the federal student grant program, and also to student loan programs. So this is interesting. It's not perfect already because there are interface problems between asylum, financial aid, and BAföG, but it's getting better. So now just some words about the DAAD. I will go through it rush. Well, it's said already here. Since it was founded, the DAAD has supported more than 2 million academics in Germany and abroad, so over a period of 90 years now. In 2017, the DAAD funded almost 140,000 people from all regions of the world, 50% of whom were women. Funding and scholarship went to 61,000 foreigners and 78,000 Germans, so it's about half. The DAAD funding program, there will be some session next week about funding possibilities of American students and researchers in Europe. This is one major player. Actually, as I said, it's the world's largest organization for international mobility, and this is the important thing. They've got a long time experience in integrating international students and in intercultural issues. So I thought, okay, refugees with an academic background, this is just another form of international students. So the DAAD developed a 4-phase model. The fourth is still rather white, and this is because it's not yet happening. Phase 1 entrance. We'll go to phase 1, 2, and 3 later. The fourth is career, of course, bringing graduates into the German labor market. We are actually currently developing a program on that, and this program will be open not only to refugees, because there are minor numbers, but also to regular international students. Concerning the 3 phases, I will go through. The phase 1 is entrance into higher education, so assessing qualifications and language proficiency. So I forgot. Yeah, of course, what the DAAD is also doing, for refugees. They offer training seminars to university staff, which is interesting because there are a lot of new issues for universities concerning residency law, asylum law, and so on, social law. And they developed 2 platforms. One is directly going on refugees, landing page in several languages, Urdu, Farsi, Arab, and so on, and then later on bilingual German, English, bilingual, and then there's an information platform for universities and the general public. Now phase 1, assessing qualification and language proficiency. Here I need to say something more besides the slide. I'm still watching the time. 3 notes in advance. first, there's no discount is given on pre-qualification of refugees compared to other international students. That's very important. We don't want them to have a quick access and then fail after 1 or 2 semesters. So no discount is given. It's hard, of course, to enter them. Harder to enter. Second, residency and asylum law. In Germany, refugees may take up studies or prep courses irrespective of their status of asylum or their country of origin. So there's no blocking of certain countries with lower recognition rates, but and also there's even asylum seekers right from the beginning are allowed to start their prep courses. Access to university is solely dependent on pre-qualification and German language level, and this one is high. It's usually C1. See, you're used to those words. So C1 is very high. It's just below native speaker, to be honest. So it's some exceptions are done by some universities, and they give access to B2, so the next lower level. University entry is regulated by the Länder, so the federal states, while individual access is ultimately decided by the single universities. And as the slide shows, sorry, wrong direction, it's complicated, it's transparent. This is the meaning of what I'm saying. So, basically, undergrad university entry to bachelor programs depends on the average performance of the educational system of the country of origin. So Syria, not on the individual performance so much. So Syria, for example, before the civil war had a fairly decent school system with upper secondary final exam comparable to the German Abitur. Thus, Syrians' access to Germany has always been rather easy as compared to high school graduates from countries that do not have final exams after their high school, such as Korea, USA, and others. So it's easier for Syrians to access a German bachelor study program than for US students. But this would be another presentation about university access in Germany. But several organizations are calling for reforms actually in Germany, for example by introducing student aptitude tests such as the testers. The testers has been applied, it has been known for years, also for regular students. It's been applied in very few federal states, but the majority remains reluctant so far. Our reimbursement of testers' fees for refugees is meant as a way to catalyze reforms. So we're also doing higher education policy by running these programs. But so far it has only had minor effects. 1 or 2 states have introduced testers now for refugees and more general for international students. Okay, just to come back to refugee success rates though, it's interesting. So for Syrians, to put it bluntly, if they got 70% or better in their final exams, school exams, high school exams, they've got direct access to a German university. If they are between 60 and 70%, indirect access via the so-called Studienkolleg in German. They are running those prep courses or foundation classes. If they're below 60% result, they've got no access to German universities. And UniAssist, they are pre-testing those qualifications, also of regular international students. So we try to use as many organizations and processes that were set up for international students already. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel and have interface problems later on. So UniAssist are monitoring to us because we're also funding again the fees that the refugees usually would have to pay for having their qualification assessed. It's been reimbursed by us, and it shows that 19% of the refugees were directly eligible for a master's program, and 49% directly eligible for a bachelor program, 12% eligible for prep courses at a Studienkolleg, so the indirect access way, and only 6% were rejected. And by the time of the survey, 13% had not been clarified yet. So we can say altogether 80% are okay to head on and go in their way of prep courses and going to university. And then what we're also assessing is, of course, the language skills. Therefore, we need the onset for, and again, here we're paying the fees for refugees. Otherwise, it's up to others as well. But here, the fees are not very high. That's what I was just saying. They were forwarded to universities, but university always have the final decision about the final access to university. So UniAssist doesn't know if 80% were really admitted to universities. Okay, now phase 2, prep courses for is the Integra program, and I see I have to rush through a little bit. This is what we are preparing. It's either at universities or Studienkollegs, 128 universities, 39 Studienkollegs, all over Germany. Just to say, because of course you also know about these discussions and debates and the political situation in Germany. It's all over Germany. That means in Eastern Germany as well. They're even quite successful in Eastern Germany with these programs, and the universities again are very committed there, and even also the students, the volunteers, and they play a major role for their city, for their region, because it's the hub for tolerance and integration and positive reaction to the refugee crisis. I don't want to speak about a crisis. So we follow 4 main policy goals with these. These 4 policy goals are humanitarian, educational, economic, and maybe also security issues. So humanitarian, bringing refugees into higher education as quickly as possible. This is why we're so happy we can already send asylum seekers to prep courses. Other integration programs in Germany only start after the asylum seeking process is terminated. So this means, especially for Afghans, it takes very long, out of several reasons. So this may take up to 2 years, where they are just sitting around. Here they can start already after, let's say, 3 months. So we may want to make use of the high motivation at the beginning in order to prevent frustration and trauma breakouts by empowering refugees to pursue a new positive goal. This is the humanitarian goal. It's the educational. Efficient target group specific language courses as opposed to general integration courses run by the BAMF, the migration office. There people are from various educational backgrounds are put together in one course. This is maybe not so efficient, and this is also what people tell everybody, and this has been scientifically already monitored. So here we've got specific courses for young academics or talented young people, and where they are taught academic language use. This is also important. It's so that they know the right way, like academics or skilled people talk. This is a different way of talking, as we all know. And these courses happen in a welcoming environment and a relevant environment, because they also get to know how university works when they're doing their prep courses at a university. Economic goals is the third goal, integrating refugees into German economy on a level as high as possible. The refugees show high requests for STEM studies. And this is good for Germany, for the German economy, because we are lacking young and highly skilled qualified workforce. Germany pursues the goal, in general, to retain more international university graduates. So,
win-win.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully win-win, and this is also like a little advert to you sitting in the room. So, and security issues, that's maybe the fourth. Most refugees may stay in Germany, even if they only receive a waiver asylum refugee status, because they cannot be sent back for humanitarian and other reasons. So, this is maybe a little bit blunt. But a clever person with a goal and a job may serve our society. A clever person without perspective may become a threat. So, if you can't send them away, better integrate them well into curriculum. So, but this is my personal. So, participant's voice in German, it's actually by a Syrian of 21 age. He's in Trier, and he's on a prep course. Yeah, Abdul Rahman Al-Hassan, and you can read it for yourselves. And then phase 3, the welcome program, on-campus inclusion. The important thing is happening again. Oh yeah, sorry. Germany has around 400 universities. So altogether, taken Integra and Welcome together, 200 universities participate in the DAAD's program. So basically, the half and the larger half, the important half, so to say, the larger universities, they all contribute. And so 30,000 refugees have been reached by more than 500 student initiatives at 160, around 160 universities. Here, what our something which we invented last year only. Working student positions are being funded, so that's interesting. But we don't want to substitute the voluntary engagement, but we want to complement it by some certain working students positions, so that they can coordinate those different initiatives and especially coordinate with university administration. This is one goal actually. Last year we founded the Welcome Award, which we are giving annually to 3 outstanding initiatives. So this gives you an example of what is happening, like with language courses and refugee law clinics, and often it's interesting to see that refugees try to give back as soon as possible. So they teach Arab, they teach Farsi, they talk about intercultural issues, they give workshops, conferences, and so on. So that's quite interesting. Our policy goals of the Welcome program: first, to enhance the quality of the student services provided to refugees, and also to empower the refugee students to engage in return. And then, for the German students, we also want to do something. We want to enhance international and intercultural experience of German students. Many go abroad, but not many also don't go abroad during their studies. So this is a way of internationalizing at home. We also want to provide them practical professional experience. This is very important if you look at the refugee law clinic. I mean, if you're a law student and you're working on very practical, hands-on issues of migration law, of social law for migrants and so on, I think this is a kind of study everybody would, especially in Germany, where studies sometimes may be a little too theoretical, and they will be happy to have this kind of studies because they also get to know their future employers, maybe. So this is very interesting for them as well. And thus we try to include service learning in curricula and seminars. An open point is still that the engagement often is not accepted for credit points, although this would be possible after Bologna rules. So we're still working on this issue with the universities. And third area of goals, we want to strengthen communication between students, faculties, and administration. I don't know how it's working here in the US. I've only been here for 2 weeks, but in Germany it's often a problem that they work very independently, and a lot of prejudices against each other. So this is a way of improving also the communication on campus. And as I said before, a complementary way of internationalizing German universities. Another participant's voice of someone who's also taking part in welcome classes you cannot read even not me. So he is working in practical language classes. He is also 21 years old. He's also in Trier, also from Syria, and yeah, he wants to become a physicist student. Sorry, physicist student. Okay. So we also, of course, we try to evaluate and monitor our programs, because we're fans of evidence-based policy making. And there's been an advisory board, and I've got a few copies of this here with me. There's first monitoring brochure from last year. There will be a second soon on the achievements of the things. You can take away them later. This one is more like testimonial driven and policy goals of those programs. So please feel free to catch a copy of this one in English. And they are also published electronically, of course. So, integral participants by residence status and by gender. As I said, for us it's important to have early access to university. So at the beginning, in 2000, we're talking about 2016, at the beginning of the language courses, integral language courses, we had asylum seekers, 20% around. As there were many Syrians amongst them, I guess most of those were settled after very quickly. So most of the participants are already accepted refugees. So it doesn't really hold with the very early access, because it depends on every university can decide whom to take. So they can also decide to only take accepted refugees. But still there's a higher number of people who are still in the ongoing asylum seeking process. This is the gender balance. In general, we've got 19% women and 81% men. This is of course low, because in general the refugee population, there's about 1/3 of women, but we see that adult women from those countries of origin usually show lower education levels than men. Exception, interesting exception, Iran. There we've got 37% of women, and this is not a real surprise, because in Iran women's participation in higher education is rather high. So this used to hold also for countries like Turkey earlier. They've got a very high percentage of female professors in Turkey. It seems to drop a little bit in Turkey, I'm not sure, but so this is a cultural issue of women's participation in general, higher education in general. And the results, how do they do? What do they achieve? So we can say that around 60% totally achieved the goal. This needn't mean that they landed already at C1, because we're again talking about 2016, but maybe the course, it was an A2 course or a B2 course, so they managed to reach that goal. They partially, another 8% partially reached that goal, 20% were still ongoing, and 12% did not achieve. So I think, I mean, 100% achievement wouldn't be interesting, then it makes this, you have to be selective in some way as well, so we're very happy with this figure. And the German Rectors Conference, every half year, every semester, asks the question to universities how they are doing, and so we can say at least 6,300 refugees enrolled in a regular bachelor or master's program since 2015, but this figure is probably heavily underreported, because universities' respondents rate was low, and it's not a representative study, so you cannot really calculate it. So it's a low response rate, lack of statistic recording of a refugee status at the universities, or they were reluctant to transfer or to give us the figures, or give the DAAD the figures, because of privacy concerns. The German Statistical Office counted alone in its latest figure 8,600 Syrians in German universities, plus 7,500 Iranians, hundreds of Iraqis and Afghans, and so we can say that maximum there from countries of crisis, they needn't be refugees, the maximum will be around 18,000 at German universities at the moment. But so this is the maximum maybe, and the minimum being 6,600, 6,300, so the truth lies somewhere in between. Other overall evidence of our programs participating of 200 universities throughout Germany, I said already. There's multi-partisan support in the German parliament, in the federal parliament, or it was, one must say, now with the new party in a German parliament, there have been already some critical questions to our ministry about those refugee integration programs, but in general there's multi-partisan support, and there's also support by overall support by the German Länder. There's been no criticism, no matter which party is ruling in the state. We have some challenges. There are some local job centers attempting to deter refugees from studies and put them rather into work below their qualification level, and this is an ongoing issue that we're working around. But there are also opportunities. With the experience of 200 universities with these programs, we're starting to begin to, could we use some of these programs, some of the instruments also for regular international students to improve their integration in German higher education. So this is what we're thinking on at the moment. So now my question to you is, because I'm doing this research stay here, I wonder, going back to that first, to the cake of 35% with high school certificate, is this an historical exception or is this a rule? I'm talking to historians here in the room especially. Do our perceptions of refugees need to be rectified maybe? If this was not an exception. So there are certain plausibilities, I think, from my point of view, like, okay, for intellectuals, there may be a higher persecution risk of intellectuals because they like free speech, they like scientific freedom, and there, by the way, there are also programs in Germany for threatened and persecuted scholars, which I didn't go into details already, not yet. On the other hand, war affects everybody, so I'm not sure whether this holds with the intellectuals' risks. But there are other issues. Maybe there are a refugee over long distance, over a long time, maybe requires higher intellectual organizational skills, foreign language knowledge, intercultural knowledge, and third, it's also expensive to get via the Mediterranean, and in higher education often goes with higher financial resources. So what I'm looking for is really like historical evidence, bibliographic references, and partners to talk to during my 2 remaining weeks before I go back to Germany. And this has been at last, and I was talking much too long. So thank you for your attention and your input, hopefully now in the remaining minutes, and your questions. And if you want to contact me, this is my email address in Germany. So thank you very much for your attention.